The first time Daniel kissed her hand, she nearly slapped him. It was late afternoon. The sky streaked with orange fire as the sun sank behind the row of houses, and the cicadas were singing louder than ever. He was just 17, lanky, nervous, still carrying the scent of grass and sweat from mowing her lawn. She was 34, beautiful in a quiet, worn way, dark hair twisted up messily, faded jeans hugging her waist. A woman who had learned to carry both exhaustion and dignity at the same time. He wasn't supposed to touch her. He knew that, she knew that, and yet, he did. Her sharp intake of breath made his heart stop. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. Don't you ever do that again. He pulled his hand back instantly, cheeks burning, breath catching. But in that single reckless moment, he had made the truth clear. He was in love with her. Not the way a boy admires a crush. No, his heart had chosen her like it was fate. Like nothing else in the world could ever matter. And the worst part, she felt something too. If you haven't yet subscribed, take a moment. You won't want to miss what happens next. Her name was Claire. To the neighborhood, she was simply the single mom who lived 2 houses down, raising her daughter alone after her husband walked out 5 years ago. To Daniel, she was the center of everything. It started small, the way she smiled when she thanked him for helping carry her groceries, the way she looked at her daughter, protective yet tender, the way her laughter sounded like music on evenings when she sat on the porch, sipping tea and letting herself relax for just a moment. Daniel was young, yes, but he wasn't blind. He could see her loneliness, feel the heaviness she tried to hide, and every time he saw her brushing a strand of hair from her tired eyes, pushing the lawnmower across her backyard, hugging her daughter tight at school drop-off, he felt his chest ache, not with pity, with love. Real love. The kind that doesn't wait for permission, the kind that happens once in a lifetime, whether you're ready or not. But the afternoon he kissed her hand was the day everything changed. Daniel, she repeated, this time louder, her voice firm as stone. You're just a boy. Don't confuse gratitude with whatever this is. He swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, his body shaking, but something inside him refused to back down. I'm not confused, he said quietly. I know how I feel. Her eyes flashed fear, anger, something else she didn't dare name. She turned sharply, walking inside and shutting the door, leaving him alone on the porch. For most people, that would have been the end, a mistake to be forgotten. But for Daniel, that was just the beginning. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind replayed every second, the warmth of her skin beneath his lips, the way her eyes widened, the crack in her voice when she told him to stop. He knew she was older. He knew the world would laugh at him, condemn him, call him foolish, even sick. But none of that mattered. What mattered was her. And when he looked out his window and saw her light still glowing past midnight, he felt something pull at him stronger than fear, stronger than shame. The next morning he tried to act normal. He helped his mom with breakfast, joked with his younger brother, even kicked around a soccer ball in the yard. But his eyes kept drifting to the house next door. Claire's curtains were drawn when she finally stepped out with her daughter. Her face was carefully composed, like a mask. She waved at his mother across the street, smiled politely at the mailman, but when her gaze accidentally crossed Daniel's, it flickered, just for a moment, just long enough for him to see what she was trying to hide. She was shaken. And maybe, just maybe, she felt the same. Later that week, Daniel found himself in her backyard again, helping trim the hedges. She tried to keep her distance, giving him instructions without looking at him too long. But tension hung in the air like static before a storm. When he wiped the sweat from his forehead, she finally spoke. Daniel, we need to set some boundaries, she said firmly, her eyes locking onto his. Whatever you're feeling, it can't happen. Do you understand? I'm your neighbor. I'm a mother. And she faltered. You're just a kid. He met her gaze, steady and unwavering. I don't care about age, he said. I care about you. Her lips parted, as if to argue, but no words came out. For a long moment, she just looked at him, her breath shallow, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Then, abruptly, she turned away. Go home, Daniel, she whispered. Please. Before we both regret this. But as he walked back across the yard, his chest pounding, he knew something undeniable. She was fighting a heart just as much as he was, and sooner or later, one of them was going to break. The sound of the police cruiser pulling away left the street eerily quiet. Neighbors shuffled back into their homes, whispering behind curtains, their curiosity satisfied for the night. But Daniel couldn't move. He stood frozen on Claire's porch, his shirt sticking to his back with sweat, his eyes fixed on her pale face. She looked as though the ground had given way beneath her feet. They let him go, she murmured, staring past Daniel as if he weren't even there. He didn't do anything tonight, just shouted at the door. They said unless he threatens me directly, there's nothing they can do. Her daughter sniffled beside her, clutching Claire's arm. Daniel's chest ached at the sight. He wanted to wrap them both in his arms, to shield them from the world, but he held himself back. Not yet, Claire, he said softly. He's dangerous. You can't just wait for him to show up again. Her eyes flicked to him, hard and sharp. And what would you have me do, Daniel? Move away? Hide forever? Yes, he blurted. surprising even himself, if that's what it takes. Her jaw clenched. For a moment she looked furious, but then her face crumpled, and she sat heavily on the porch step, burying her face in her hands. Daniel sat beside her, rain-damp air clinging to his skin, the night buzzing with distant cicadas. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but the words felt like lies. So instead, he whispered, "You're not alone. Not while I'm here." When she lifted her head, her eyes were wet and tired. "You shouldn't be saying things like that," she whispered. "You're still a boy. You don't understand what it costs to love someone like me." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to shout that he did understand, that he saw her, scars and all, and wanted her anyway, but the words lodged in his chest. All he could do was meet her gaze, his silence speaking louder than anything he might have said. Over the next few days, Daniel found himself circling her world more than ever. He offered to drive her daughter to school when her car wouldn't start. He stayed late to fix a broken window latch. Every small task was an excuse, but also a promise. He would be there in ways no one else was. At first, she resisted, insisting she could manage. But the cracks in her resolve showed. The more her ex lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon, the more she let Daniel in. One night, after putting her daughter to bed, she found Daniel still sitting on her porch, a book open in his lap. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted, closing the book. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She sighed, sinking into the chair beside him. The air smelled of jasmine from the garden, mingling with the faint hum of summer insects. "You're going to ruin yourself, Daniel," she said after a long silence. "You're too young to carry someone else's broken pieces." "Maybe," he said, turning to her, "but maybe I was meant to." Her eyes searched his, looking for the immaturity she expected, the naive foolishness of a teenage crush. Instead, she saw something raw, steady, frighteningly real. "Why me?" she whispered. He didn't hesitate. "Because the first time I saw you cry, I wanted to make sure you never had to again." She inhaled sharply, turning her face away. He shouldn't say things like that. He shouldn't make her chest tighten, her pulse quicken, her heart stir in ways it hadn't in years. But the truth was undeniable. His words reached her in places she thought were long dead. The storm broke 3 nights later. Claire's ex showed up again, pounding on the door, his voice hoarse with rage. "Claire, you can't keep me from my daughter." Daniel was in her kitchen when it happened, helping wash the dishes. The moment he heard the pounding, he froze. Then he saw Claire's face white as a sheet, eyes wide with terror. Something inside him snapped. He moved before she could stop him, yanking the door open. "Leave her alone," Daniel shouted, his voice shaking with fury. The man towered over him in kempt beard, eyes wild, reeking of alcohol. He sneered. "And who the hell are you?" "I'm someone who cares about her," Daniel said firmly. "More than you ever did." The man laughed, a cruel, jagged sound. "What? Are you her new little boyfriend? You're a kid. Get out of my way before I stop it." Claire's voice cracked like a whip as she rushed forward, pulling Daniel back. She faced her ex, her body trembling but her voice steady. "You don't get to come here and scare us anymore. I don't care what you want to or not welcome." His eyes flickered between them, rage burning hot. "You'll regret this, Claire," he spat, before storming off into the night. The door slammed shut, the echo rattling the house. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Claire turned to Daniel, her hands shaking. "You could have been hurt," she whispered. "Why would you do that?" He swallowed, his chest heaving. "Because I'd rather be hurt than let him hurt you." Her lips parted, words caught in her throat. She wanted to tell him he was reckless, that this was madness. But instead, tears filled her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let herself collapse into someone's arms. Daniel held her as she cried, his hand gentle on her back, his heart thundering with something fierce and unshakable. For a moment, she let herself believe in him, in his love, in the impossible truth that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight alone anymore. But when her tears dried and the weight of reality returned, she pulled away. Her eyes glistened as she whispered the words she didn't want to say. "This can't happen. Daniel, even if my heart wants it to, it can't." Her voice broke. "You're still just a boy." And yet, in the silence that followed, she knew the lie in her own words, because nothing about the way he held her, nothing about the way he looked at her felt like a boy at all. The silence between them stretched for days. Daniel tried to keep his distance, but his heart betrayed him every time he caught sight of Claire in her driveway or watering the flowers in her front yard. He wanted to speak, to explain, to beg her not to shut him out, but she had drawn the line, and he respected her enough not to cross it. Still, love has a way of finding cracks in the walls people build. One evening, a storm rolled through the neighborhood. Heavy rain hammered the rooftops, lightning tore the sky, and thunder rattled the glass panes in every house. Daniel was sitting by his window, staring at the sheets of water cascading down, when he saw her. Claire was struggling to pull her trash bins back from the curb, rain soaking her clothes, her hair plastered to her cheeks. Her daughter stood in the doorway, calling for her to hurry. Without thinking, Daniel bolted out into the rain. "Let me help," he shouted, grabbing one side of the heavy bin. She spun toward him, startled, rain streaming down her face. For a second it looked like she might refuse, but then she let go, letting him drag the bins to the side of the house. By the time they were finished, both were drenched. Her white t-shirt clung to her skin, and she crossed her arms tightly over her chest, suddenly aware of how she must look. "Daniel," she said breathlessly, "you can't just come running like this every time. People will talk." "I don't care what people say," he replied, his voice steady despite the thunder overhead. "I care about you." Her jaw tightened. She was about to scold him, to remind him of boundaries, but then a flash of lightning illuminated her face, and Daniel saw it. Not anger, not rejection, fear of what it meant that she couldn't push him away as easily as she thought. The storm passed, but the tension only grew stronger. At school, Daniel found it impossible to concentrate. His friends teased him about being distracted, assuming it was some girl in class. He laughed it off, but inside he carried a secret too heavy to share. Every night he replayed her voice, her warnings, the way her eyes softened even as she told him to go. Meanwhile, rumors began to stir in the neighborhood. Claire's ex-husband had been seen in town again, Lina, more desperate, with whispers of debts and bad habits. Daniel overheard his mother talking to another neighbor one morning. "They say he wants to see Claire." His mother muttered over coffee, but she'd be a fool to let that man back in her life. Daniel's stomach knotted. The thought of her ex returning, hurting her again, made his blood boil. He couldn't stand the idea of her being pulled back into the misery she had fought so hard to escape that night. He found himself pacing outside, staring at her house lit by the warm glow of the living room lamp. He imagined her sitting there with her daughter, trying to pretend she wasn't scared. He couldn't keep silent anymore. He knocked softly at her door. She opened it a crack, her expression wary. "Daniel, it's late. I know, but I need to say this." His voice trembled, but his eyes were fierce. "You don't have to face him alone. If he comes back, I'll protect you." Her brows furrowed. "Protect me? You're 17. You don't even know what you're saying." "I know enough," he insisted. "I know he hurt you. I know he left you broken. And I know I'd never let anyone do that to you again." She stared at him, stunned. His words cut deeper than he realized. For years she had carried the burden of raising her daughter alone, shielding her from the ugliness of the past. And now here was this boy, barely a man, speaking with a conviction that even grown men rarely showed. "Daniel," her voice cracked. She gripped the doorframe as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. "Why are you doing this to me? Why can't you just find a girl your age and forget about me?" He took a step closer, rain still dripping from his hair. "Because when I look at you, Claire, I don't see your age. I don't see your past. I see the person who makes my heart race, the person I'd do anything for, and I can't pretend that isn't real." Her lips trembled. She wanted to slam the door, to end this madness before it consumed them both. But instead, she whispered, "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me," he said softly. "Show me the truth. I can take it." She froze, her eyes wide, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. For the first time, she realized he wasn't just infatuated. He wasn't chasing some fantasy. He was offering her something terrifying and beautiful, unconditional love, and it terrified her more than anything her ex-husband could do. She slammed the door shut before she could break, but behind it, she pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the wild hammer of her heartbeat. Knowing she was already losing the battle she swore she would win. The following morning, Daniel woke to chaos. A police car parked outside Claire's house, her daughter crying on the porch, neighbors gathering, whispering. His stomach dropped. He ran across the lawn, ignoring his mother's shout. "Claire," he called. "What happened?" She stood on the porch, pale and shaken, speaking quietly with the officers. When she turned and saw Daniel, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and dread. "It's him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He came back," and just like that, the forbidden tension between them collided with something darker, something dangerous, because now, the past wasn't just haunting her, it was threatening everything. For days after that night, Claire avoided him. She kept her curtains drawn, a porch light off, her voice clipped and polite whenever he came too close. Daniel felt the wall she was rebuilding, brick by brick, and it drove him mad with helplessness. He had seen her break. He had held her in his arms. He knew what her heart whispered even as her lips told him to go away, and now, she wanted to pretend none of it ever happened at school. Daniel drifted through the halls like a ghost. His friends noticed his silence, but he brushed them off. Nights were the hardest, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining her alone next door, telling herself she didn't need him. By the third day, he couldn't stand it anymore. He knocked on her door after sunset. The house smelled faintly of lavender when she opened it, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. "Daniel, please," she sighed. "Not tonight." He stepped forward, his voice trembling with determination. "You can't keep running from me, from us." Her eyes hardened. "There is no us." "Yes, there is," he whispered. "You felt it." "I know you did." She froze. He saw the flicker in her eyes, the battle raging inside her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she turned sharply, retreating into the kitchen. Against all reason, he followed. She set a glass of water on the counter, gripping it like it could anchor her. Daniel, you don't understand what you're doing. People will talk. They'll call me names. They'll call you worse. And if your mother ever found out, I don't care about any of that. He cut in. His voice was low, rough with emotion. I care about you, not the world. Just you. Her hand trembled. Water sloshed over the rim of the glass. You think it's that simple? Love isn't enough. Daniel. Not when it's wrong. He stepped closer, his chest heaving. It only feels wrong because you're scared. But it isn't wrong. Not to me. Not when I look at you and I know I'll never love anyone else like this. The air between them pulsed with something dangerous, something electric. She tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. He reached out, slowly, as if giving her every chance to pull away. His fingers brushed hers where they clutched the glass. She let out a shaky breath. Daniel, she whispered, her eyes wet. Why can't you just let me go? Because I love you, he said simply, and I think you'll love me too. The glass slipped from her hand, clattering into the sink. She turned away, pressing both palms to the counter, her shoulders shaking. I can't, she choked out. I'm supposed to be stronger than this. I'm supposed to protect you from me, from everything. He stepped closer, his voice fierce now. I don't want protection. I want you. She spun around, tears streaking her cheeks, anger and longing colliding in her eyes. You don't know what you're asking. Do you understand what people will say about me, about us? That I'm a terrible mother, that I've ruined you. Let them say it, he snapped. Let them say whatever they want, because none of it matters. Not if we know the truth. Silence fell, heavy and breathless, and then, as if something inside her finally broke, she reached up and cupped his face with trembling hands. The kiss was desperate, shocking, fire and storm all at once. For one breathless eternity, the world outside ceased to exist. No neighbors, no ex-husband, no rules, just two souls colliding where they were never supposed to meet. When she pulled back, she stared at him as though she couldn't believe what she'd just done. Her lips parted, her chest rising and falling, her body trembling like she'd just leapt off a cliff. This is insane, she whispered. Daniel touched his forehead to hers, his voice steady. Then let's be insane together. That night, for the first time, Claire let herself be vulnerable with him. She sat on the couch, her legs tucked under her guard stripped bare. She told him about the years with her ex, the broken promises, the shouting, the nights she cried herself to sleep while her daughter pretended not to hear. Daniel listened, every muscle in his body tight with anger and grief for her. When she faltered, he reached for her hand, grounding her, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. You deserved better, he said softly. Her voice cracked. And you think you can be that? A boy who hasn't even lived yet. He met her eyes without flinching. I don't just think it, I know it. Her heart twisted painfully. Everything in her screamed that she should push him away again, that she should end this before it went any further. But when she looked at him so young, so stubborn, so utterly devoted, something inside her whispered a truth she couldn't deny anymore. She loved him. Later that night, as he slipped out the back door to avoid neighbors' eyes, she stood at the window, watching him go. Her hand rested over her heart, her body trembling with fear and longing. What terrified her wasn't the forbidden kiss, or the risk of being discovered. What terrified her was that for the first time in years, she felt alive, and she didn't know if she could ever give that up. Secrets never stay hidden for long. For weeks, Daniel and Claire lived in the fragile bubble of stolen moments, glances across the yard, whispered conversations on the porch after her daughter was asleep, a touch of her hand lingering too long when he helped with the dishes. It was dangerous, it was reckless, and it was intoxicating, but bubbles always burst. It happened one Saturday morning. Daniel's mother had stopped by Claire's house to drop off a pie she'd baked. Daniel was in the kitchen, rinsing cups from the night before. Claire had been laughing, actually laughing for the first time in ages, her daughter happily coloring at the table. And then the sound of his mother's voice froze him in place. Daniel. He turned, water dripping from his hands. His mother stood in the doorway, pie dish in hand, her face pale with shock. Claire's cheeks flushed crimson, her eyes darting nervously between them. In that instant, the world collapsed. The fallout was brutal. His mother's words came sharp and fast. How could you? With her, she's twice your age. Daniel, she's your neighbor. Do you have any idea what people will say? Daniel tried to speak, but Claire stopped him, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, I never should have let it get this far. And just like that, she ended it. For days, Daniel felt hollow. She wouldn't answer the door. She ignored his texts. At school, he barely noticed the hours passing. At night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the memory of her kiss like a wound that wouldn't heal. But beneath the despair, something else burned, a stubborn, furious certainty. This wasn't over. He loved her. And love, real love, wasn't meant to be buried alive just because the world didn't understand. The chance to prove it came sooner than he expected. One evening, walking home from practice, Daniel saw a shadow at Claire's porch. His gut twisted. It was her ex-husband again, slouched against the doorframe, shouting through the wood. Daniel sprinted the last stretch, his breath ragged, his heart pounding. Leave her alone, he roared. The man turned, eyes bloodshot, lip curling. You again. What are you? Her little lapdog. I said get away. Daniel's voice cracked with raw fury. Before it could escalate, the door flew open. Claire stood there, trembling, her daughter behind her clutching a stuffed bear. "Stop it," she cried. "Both of you." Her ex sneered. "This your new boy toy, Claire." Pathetic something inside. Daniel snapped. He stepped forward, fists clenched, but Claire grabbed his arm. "Daniel, no," she whispered. Her eyes burned with fear, not of her ex, but of losing him. She turned on her ex, her voice shaking but fierce. "Get off my porch. You don't belong here anymore. You lost that right years ago." The man muttered curses, but when neighbors' lights began flicking on, he stumbled off into the night. Silence fell, heavy and thick. Claire's daughter went back inside, shutting the door quietly, leaving them standing alone in the glow of the porch light. Daniel's chest heaved. His fists still trembled, but when he looked at Claire, he saw tears glistening in her eyes. "Why do you keep doing this?" she whispered. "Why do you keep throwing yourself into danger for me?" He stepped closer, voice breaking. "Because I love you, and I don't care who knows it anymore." Her lips parted, her breath catching. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. And then, like the dam of her resistance finally shattered, she pulled him into her arms. The kiss this time wasn't desperate or forbidden. It was inevitable, of course. The world didn't forgive Isaac. His mother was horrified. Neighbors whispered. But Daniel didn't back down. He stood tall, his hand in Claire's, his voice unshakable whenever anyone tried to tear them apart. "This isn't a mistake," he told his mother one evening. "It's love. And I'd rather live with love the world hates than without the only love that's ever meant anything." And slowly, painfully, people began to see it. Not everyone, never everyone, but enough to give them room to breathe. Months later, on a golden autumn evening, Daniel sat on Claire's porch again. Her daughter was laughing in the yard, chasing fireflies, the sky painted in strokes of crimson and gold. Claire sat beside him, her hand entwined with his. "You changed everything," she said softly, her head resting against his shoulder. He smiled faintly. "No. You changed everything the moment you let me in." She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his presence wrap around her. For the first time in years, she felt safe, alive, loved. It wasn't easy. It never would be. But love, real love, never is. And as the fireflies lit up the yard, Daniel knew with absolute certainty that he had found the only place he would ever belong. By her side forever. And so, what began as something forbidden, something whispered in shadows and resisted with trembling hands, that became the one truth neither of them could deny. Daniel had loved her with the purest, most unshakable devotion, the kind that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that doesn't fade when the world turns against you. And in the end, Claire realized that love isn't measured by age or by rules. It's measured by sacrifice, by courage, by the willingness to stand beside someone no matter the storm. Because love, the real kind, doesn't care what's right in the eyes of others. It only cares what's true. If this story touched you, if you felt the weight of their struggle and the beauty of their resolution, then let it remind you, the heart chooses what it chooses. And sometimes, that choice can change everything. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming life lesson, and if you haven't yet subscribed, take a moment now because there are so many more stories waiting to move you, to make you think, and maybe even to remind you of your own hidden truths. Until next time, never stop believing in love.